Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Hite Namani.
The event that really stuck out in my mind is how a jogger was coming in the opposite direction. A man, I remember, he was wearing all white, shorts, whites, and he was jogging, and the jogger, who was going slowly, said, "Good morning," looking at Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, "Good morning to you," something like that. And I remember looking at the devotees who were surprised that Prabhupada didn't say, something like Hare Krishna or, some kind of more sacred greeting of some kind. But what this reminded me of is how Prabhupada was a perfect gentleman. And that was how Prabhupada defined a devotee in that famous news interview down in Gainesville. How can you tell a devotee when you see a devotee? Prabhupada said, you will know by the fact that he is a perfect gentleman. And I'm assuming that he also meant a perfect lady as well.
I remember we went out with Prabhupada, and, as is common, some man said, "Buenos dias," in Spanish to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada asked Srila Ananda Maharaj, what is he saying? He said, "Oh, this is a good day" in Spanish. And so Prabhupada said, "Buenos dias," in Spanish. He said that. So Prabhupada began his Spanish speaking at that point. Buenos dias, he said. So you didn't know Prabhupada spoke Spanish, did you? Yeah, but you see the new things. Buenos dias. I was very surprised. I was very impressed. Because he said it, and the correct pronunciation was perfect, He was a great linguist, Prabhupada.
So Prabhupada was picked up by this fellow Lou Gottlieb in the city in a Volvo, and Lou told me the story that he said to Prabhupada, "Put your seatbelt on." And Prabhupada said something like, "Krishna is my seatbelt." He remembered that, he told me that story. So Prabhupada got there, and I happened to be in the garden. Just, I don't know if you can say this on tape, but most of the people walked around with no clothing on or anything like that up there. I happened to be in a garden when Prabhupada arrived. I was digging potatoes in the garden there. And Lou Gottlieb brought him over, and there I was, and shook Prabhupada's hand. I was standing there, and Prabhupada did say, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm digging potatoes." He said, "No, what are you doing with your life?"
So my mother-in-law agreed to come meet Prabhupada, and that was, kind of surprising. She was a very proper, impeccable lady, always looked beautifully dressed and very polite and very nice, but she said she wanted to do it because, we were interested in this. So she came to meet Prabhupada at the darshan, and we got to the door of the apartment, and we opened the door, and the room was full. Like, it was a small room, and it was packed, and I could see nobody was going to make a path for us or anything. So we just kind of stood at the door, and I didn't even think about her. I just was happy just to be seeing Prabhupada there, and he was relaxed behind his low desk, and the white sheets were on the floor and stuff. And but then he looked up and he saw us at the door, and he could see that I was with, a mother. So immediately he smiled, like a huge, big, warm smile, and he waved us to come in, and he wanted her to come up to the desk. And she had brought a basket of fruit, which I didn't even tell her to do that. She just did it on her own as a polite thing to do. And he was so pleased. He just, there's something about Srila Prabhupada, you got a lot of information just from his gestures and his look, because his senses were so much a part of who he was. So he was smiling very warmly, and it put her completely at ease. And I think he said a few things to her, like, how are you? And, like that. And then we just sat there down by the desk, and he had his darshan. I don't remember too much about it.
So then in LA, I had my second initiation from Prabhupada. There were just two of us brahmacharis who were initiated, one on either side of Srila Prabhupada's Vyasasan in the old temple room. And we heard the mantra from Prabhupada and were initiated. Later in the day, I went up to Prabhupada's room, and from my perspective, coming from Canada, I was hot, in LA. So in those days, in summer heat, we sometimes would dress in, what's the name of that when it's crossed across here, the cloth? It's got a particular name, but I think probably sannyasis have it only these days, but quite often we would wear just that, without the kurta. So I was sitting there in the window seat with the window open and having darshan, listening to Prabhupada. Govinda Dasi was there, and she had a new sweater for Prabhupada. She had knitted, wool sweater, which she presented to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada changed right there on the spot, sitting behind his table. And then the conversation went on, and Prabhupada was, then Prabhupada looked at me and said, are you cold? And I didn't pick up on this straight away, but he was playing with me, and I said, no, Prabhupada, I'm fine. I'm from Canada, I was thinking, this is fine for me. But I didn't get it straight away, but he said, are you sure? He gave me a second chance, and I said, oh, yes, now I am cold. So I received Prabhupada's old ex-jumper sweater.
So one time, when Prabhupada was here in the manor at that time, people would go on the morning walks. And one morning I was going to go on the morning walk, and it was raining, and I hadn't actually put a coat or shoes on. I was little, I'm going on the morning walk with Prabhupada. So Prabhupada came down the stairs, and I was waiting in the manor, in the temple room. Prabhupada came by, and when he stood by me, how he knew I was going on the morning walk, he stood right in front of me, with his face like this to mine, and he said, you are going on the morning walk? And I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. And he said, you are not properly dressed. So I was amazed by that. It just made me realize how he came with such a big mission for the whole world. But still, even on the small, seemingly small things, he was so not just caring, but he noticed everything about everyone. And then he gave personally, so, yeah.
My daughter must have been like 5 years old or something like that, And by then she was in a Gurukula, and we had brought bangles back. We had brought bangles back for her, and she was wearing these bangles, And then he saw my daughter, and he said, "Oh," he says, "so the girls in your country, they like these too." And she said yes, and she was showing all the bangles, and he said, well, he said, you should marry her to a kshatriya. Then one of the teachers said to my daughter, you chant a Bhagavad Gita verse? And she could chant a lot of them, So I forgot what the verse was or the verses, but she chanted a couple of verses in Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada looked up, his eyes got big, said, better make it a brahmana. It's such a good sense of humor, It was so funny. Just everybody was cracking up,
when I got, the only thing was when I got initiated, he asked me, what are the 4 regulative principles and how many rounds do you chant, will you chant? And I told him the 4 regulative principles, and then I told him I would chant 16 rounds. And then he said, are you sure? And I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. And then he started laughing. And he said, I'm asking you if you're insured, because you have a spot on your face. I have a mole on my face here, and when I was younger, it was darker. And he said, you have a spot on your face, and once there was a movie star with a spot on her face, and she had it insured for a lot of money. And then he just started laughing, and everyone was laughing. He was just chuckling, and then he said, Krishna consciousness is your only insurance.
When the time came to go to India, we were all very much in great anxiety. If Srila Prabhupada is going to India, maybe he won't come back. What are we going to do without Srila Prabhupada? He said, you go on. You have classes, you do just like I taught you. So we go to the airport with Srila Prabhupada. We're in the waiting room. The time comes for boarding. We all stand up. And Srila Prabhupada looks at Brahmananda. And he gives Brahmananda a big hug. Then he looks at Gargamuni. Big hug. Then, I think it was Satsrup, I'm not remembering. So everybody says it now, I guess we're going to go get on a, watch Srila Prabhupada go out. Then he goes, Rupanuga. He gave me such a hug. He was supposed to be sick. He's so strong. I just buried my chin in the hollow of his neck and just held on.